My name is Sharon Beard, and I'm the Director for the Worker Training Program here at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Good afternoon and welcome to the NIEHS Worker Training Program 2024 Notice of Funding Opportunity for our HAZMAT training at DOE Nuclear Weapons Complex. Clinical trials not allowed. Go over here the kind of meeting guidelines and information. We have an agenda. We'll go over a little bit about Q&As as far as site logistics and things like that. But we will have two different ways for you to put questions in. You can email them to wetp@niehs.nih.gov, or you can put your questions in the Q&A portion of the Zoom. So please make sure you look at the bottom and you should be able to put your questions in Q&A. We also have links to some of these other sites that are important, the site for worker training and current funding opportunity announcements. Next slide. Here's the agenda as posted. So we'll be able to do introductions. We'll do the NOFO guidelines from the program staff. Then we'll have a quick break and then move into our Q&As for the program portion. And then we'll move into next slide. Move into the fiscal and administrative issues and guidelines by James Williams. And we'll go for NOFO review process and then also have another Q&A and then conclude at 3 o'clock. Next slide. So now I want to do introductions of all staffs participating in the webinar for the worker training program. Like I said, my name is Sharon Beard. I'm the director. We also have Eric Prasad, Dr. Eric Prasad and Kathy Allmark, who are our health specialists. And we also have Gary Johnson Jr. and Amelia Pearson, who are industrial hygienists for worker training. We'll also have other folks coming in and out. Michelle Campbell, health specialist for DERT that might assist with our human subjects questions. We have James Williams, who's a grants management specialist in our grants management branch. And then Dr. Leeward Worth, who is a scientific review administrator in our scientific review branch. We also have support for this webinar from Carrie Volker, Kenda Freeman, and Mara Calvano, from the National Clearinghouse for Worker Safety and Health Training. So if you have any problems and issues, please, send a message on the chat box in reference to issues around, connections or concerns. Next slide. So first, I wanted to give you just a quick overview. The mission of the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences is to discover how the environment affects people in order to promote healthier lives. We do this through our worker training program in multiple different ways, but I wanted to share with you a little bit about our strategic plan for the Institute. Next slide. Our strategic plan is currently under development. We had one that ended this year, and so we're trying to develop our new plan that will go from 2024 to 2029, and it will most likely have these particular themes that we have here. So we encourage you to look for that information when it comes out in the next couple of months. Next slide. Now I'm going to do the overview. I'm delighted to share an overview of our NIEHS Department of Energy Nuclear Worker Training Program as we continue our successful collaborations to support training at the Department of Energy for training workers engaged in nuclear waste cleanup and construction at DOE sites. Next slide. So just to briefly, the worker training mission is to prevent work-related harm by providing training programs for hazardous materials handlers, chemical emergency response, and waste cleanup workers. We fund nonprofit organizations with a demonstrated track record of providing high-quality occupational safety and health training so they can respond to these issues. We currently have 17 grantees or consortium that represent over 100 nonprofit safety and health organizations through cooperative agreements. And we also have some small business innovation grants. We have 4 of those. But in essence, we train workers in all 50 states under our programs, Washington, D.C. and U.S. territories. Next slide. One of the focal points of our program was our core, which is the hazardous waste operations and emergency response. So these are three broad areas of the training requirements under the HAZMAT regulation. The section E looks at general site workers, and then section P looks at workers who have certain activities dealing with RCRA and treatment, storage, and disposal facilities. And then section Q of the standard focuses on those emergency response operations and releases and threats to those. And most of our training program has this as a core, and we do this, of course, also at our DOE facilities. Next slide. The worker training program uses cooperative agreements, which is an assistant mechanisms in which substantial NIH programmatic involvement with the grant recipients is anticipated during the performance of the activities. We do this for multiple reasons because this is a national program, and we want to make sure that we don't avoid duplication. It allows us to facilitate ongoing exchange of scientific and technical information. It allows us also to have national consistency and delivery of training and curriculum and timely response to appropriate issues and national significance. And so we will work in collaboration with our grantees to make sure that we have these specific tasks and activities so it will be appropriate for the work under the DOE program. Next slide. We have all these different programs that we have under the worker training program, and each of them have different criteria and responses. What we're going to talk about today primarily is our DOE program, but in all of our programs, we've reached over 5.5 million workers, and we're proud of the work that's been done on all of our training programs. Next slide. So for our DOE program, this program was authorized in 1992 in Section 3131 of the National Defense Authorization Act. We implement it through an interagency agreement through the U.S. Department of Energy Office of Environmental Management. It focuses on training workers engaged in environmental restoration, waste treatment, and emergency response activities at DOE Nuclear Weapons Complex. And so we've been focusing on making sure we clean up the remaining nuclear materials from the legacy of the Cold War. And it really includes some of the most dangerous radioactive sites with large amounts of different types of radioactive materials, spent nuclear fuel, thousands of contaminated facilities and contaminated soil, and also any new research activities that are still ongoing. One of the hallmarks of this program is the use of worker trainers as workplace experts. We have some information about how you can learn more about some of the work that we've done in the worker training program with this particular training and journal article. Next slide. So for our DOE program, since we started the program, we've trained over contact hours, more than 7.8 million contact hours on our programs. We've trained around 755,000 workers. And this past year, in 2023, we've trained around 35,000 under our 7 grantees. And we really do this, of course, in partnership with DOE and the sites. Next slide. Here are the 7 grantees who have been doing the training over the last 5 years. They all are national consortium and doing training in multiple DOE sites. Next slide. So for the worker training current priorities, we really push for an all hazards approach to training to cover existing and emerging threats, including training on known and unknown threats. So for example, right now, what is going on out in California on Saturday, the Corral Fire started in the grassy hills managed by Lawrence Livermore National Lab, which is 60 miles north of San Francisco. At that fire, it has devoured over 22 square miles since Sunday afternoon. And so when we talk about all hazards, so this is a DOE site. So the training to deal with climate change and the impact of climate change is essential when we look at that. So you have to expand partnerships on the federal, state, and local level to address some of these collateral duty or community fence line communities doing these types of disasters. So whether it's training on CERTs, doing job hazard analysis, dealing with the current wildfires. And then we also need to make sure that we're working with some of those underserved and tribal communities that are around these sites. Next slide. So for our program, looking at all hazards and tailored training at DOE, we help fill the gaps in terms of specialized skills. We look at turnover from retirement and all of the new individuals who are coming in to work at the DOE complex. And we focus on providing trainers for course delivery. We also have a focus on looking at safe site operations and cleanup activities with a focus on hazard assessment and identification, safe hazardous materials response, and of course, increasing our knowledge and making sure we're looking at the demands dealt with certain federal regulations like 10 CFR 851 dealing with the worker safety training. Next slide. For example, we have been training at multiple DOE sites across the complex. We've just celebrated our 30th anniversary of the program. As you can see here, we've got training that's identified at Hanford site and Idaho National Laboratories. We have been partnering with the Hammer Volpa Test Center since the beginning, and we've actually done numerous different types of trainings like this one as indicated here on the respiratory protection program. And we've also had specialized skill sets and trainings that's been developed. And I think one of the biggest things that we do is we try to not duplicate efforts. So for example, at Lawrence Livermore, at Idaho National Lab, we were able to work with the DOE contractors to provide training through CPWR for the National Fire Protection Association 70E standard. So that training was developed through the grant funds, and it saved the contractor $200,000 for its first year of training, really a cost savings for the program. Next slide. So all of the programs must include or meet the following criteria. Consortium arrangements and training partnerships are strongly encouraged. An applicant may join with one or more nonprofit organizations in a single application and share resources in order to maximize worker group coverage, enhance the effectiveness of training, and bring together appropriate academic disciplines and talents. Certain arrangements are strongly encouraged. You must also have direct student worker training from the beginning of the first year. Programs targeted to multi-state and nationwide coverage to reach worker populations will be given preference in funding. Next slide. Other things to include are training that encourages peer learning, hands-on, and critical thinking and for the program. And we want to make sure that we focus on emerging training across the hazardous waste landscape and target those high-risk populations and make sure that we also look at using our minimum criteria that Dr. Eric Prasad will cover later on. Next slide. One of the key things that I think is important for us under the DOE program as federal administrators and as you as potential grantees, you must have these key partnerships to be successful under this NOFO. You must guarantee access to workers, training facilities, and these successful engagements to meet the needs. And so you have to look at the federal DOE partnerships because most of the work, cleanup work is being done under emergency management. You have to look at the standards that are being pulled together. Also different other organizations like the National Training Center, looking at reciprocity, Hammer, the DOE site managers, and of course the contractors and labor organizations and other groups like municipalities and local emergency responders to make sure that you are actually getting access to the individuals that need to be trained. Next slide. So for our program, each applicant should consider ongoing program initiatives as demonstrated in the NOFO. Some of those include things like biopreparedness, infectious disease response, dealing with federally declared disasters, like I talked about, responder and community resilience, dealing with opioid responder safety and the impact of that on the workplace. And then, of course, also the possible need of job creation and employment at DOE sites. Next slide. Renewal applications and budgets are not limited, but reflect the actual needs of the proposed project. So it should be strong and have a detailed consortium alignment. You must have competent program management, principal investigators, program managers, and coordinators. You need to have adequate training facilities, and you need to have a quality control program. One of the things that I think is important for us to mention for new applicants who never received funding under this program, you must request a budget for no more than $700,000 for the first 5 years of this program. But it is not limited for those people who've already had funding under this program. Next slide. So when you look at what we consider success over the next 5 years, we want to make sure that you develop training and have worker engagements through adult learning principles. We want to have strong train-the-trainer programs. We want to make sure that you're really establishing innovation as far as evaluation and integrating health and safety training in workplaces across the work that's being done under the DOE complex. Next slide. One thing I wanted to also mention is that we are in the process of developing our strategic plan. We have a draft one that's up on the website right now. Here are the key components here, and the link is also put in the chat box. It talks about the mission, the significance of the HAZMAT standard and other federal regulations. It talks about how I guide and document, which is a high-level overview of the minimum criteria. That's how you need to develop your training program. It talks about contract support and the National Clearinghouse and the resources that are available there. And then some of the strategic themes, priorities, and objectives that will lead us into 2029 under this program that deals with worker health and safety training, adaptability and innovation, outreach, and communication. Next slide. Wanted to also end to make sure that we talk about that the training that we do is essential to make sure that we support the operations at these DOE sites. For example, the work that we do with Hammer, 30% of the workers trained at Hanford go through the Hammer facility, and all of our grantees participate in doing training at this particular site. It is one of the most challenging sites, and we, as worker training, we have been a part of the steering committee for Hammer to make sure that we're integrating and we're doing all the support that's needed to offer the training under this program. And we want to continue those efforts across the DOE complex. Next slide. Now I'm going to turn it over to Gary Johnson, our industrial hygienist, who can cover the DOE key elements and descriptions for the program. Gary.
Thank you, Sharon. Next slide. Going forward, next 5 years, our goals and objectives: establish the DOE contractor safety and health program with best practices, drawing on those skills that we know work, the knowledge, experience of workers on the job. We want to promote culture and have continuous learning and integrated safety management and improve tax readiness. These are key things that we need to make sure continue to take place as we go forward. Through the partnerships and the training methodologies. The training methodologies, as we found out, changed during the coronavirus. We got new technologies, but one of the things that the DOE has is the National Training Center. That's where the standardization comes in. So we want to make sure that remains a prime source. And we are a key component of that, making sure that we focus on standardization and high quality training. Next slide. Along with that, we want to continue to reduce the safety health training costs. There's the directive for health and safety training reciprocity. When we say reciprocity, the grant recipients can, once they do the training, and once the contractors or DOE employees receive certain classes or they complete certain classes, those classes then become where they can go on another DOE site, and it may not be site-specific training, but these are general classes that help to reduce that redundancy, and that's where the reciprocity comes in. Our next objective, again, we're talking about reducing that redundancy, but at the same time, we want to make sure that our grant recipients can get credit for the course that they get certified. So if you come up with a new course, again, we want to go back, we want to build off the curriculum that's already there, but if we come up with a new course for, as you say, emerging issues, you get that course certified. That's kind of like internal marketability, because once the grant recipient gets that course certified, then that course can be, it can be taught across the DOE complex. So that's reducing that redundancy. And the last objective is maximize the use of the instructional technologies. We got the emerging technologies, artificial intelligence. That's a big thing that's going on right now. We want applicants and our grant recipients to be plugged in to what's been going on in the future, what's going to happen in the next 5 years. As we know, heat illness is significant, and it's probably not going to, be reduced from this standpoint. So we want to be moving towards the future with our training, with our curricula, with the delivery techniques. That's what we're looking for going forward from 2025 to 2029. Next slide. Okay, now we're going to get into some regulations, some of my favorite things. And this regulation, 29 CFR Part 1960, is federally mandated. And this particular regulation was specifically for federal employees. However, one of the things we want to focus at DOE and DOE nuclear weapons complexes is there's contractors, there's subcontractors, there's DOE employees, there's subcontractors, there's DOE. So we want to make sure that our training is designed and delivered to try to make sure it branches from the DOE employee to the contractors to the subcontractor. We got to drill down to be able to minimize and reduce some of the things we're going to be talking about here in a second. And this is what created the orders. The DOE order is basically, that's the foundation of the standards and directives that were put in place to protect the health and safety of the workers, as the OSH Act states. Chronic beryllium disease prevention program. That's a DOE order 850. That's something that chronic beryllium disease is something that we really want to. We know what we got employees that are going to be exposed to it. We've got to reduce those exposures. We can't mitigate it down to zero, but our training programs has to kind of drill down and get some of these exposures reduced, raising the awareness, raising the work practices, the work setup. So that's a part of the CBDPP. Next is the Occupational Radiation Protection Program. As we know, nuclear waste radiation is a legacy. It's a legacy hazard that's here. That's why it's so important that we do not take it for granted that people are going to be exposed to radiation. That's going to be a part of the training. The monitoring equipment, the doses, the dose reporting. That's in 10 CFR 835. Next slide. Speaking of the radiation, speaking of the need to monitor, to monitor that dose protection, and also tying in the partnerships. One of our grant recipients, United Steelworkers, working through the Tony Mazzocchi Center, they recognized there was a shortage of radiological control technicians at the DOE complex in Portsmouth, Ohio, and Paducah, Kentucky. So this is an excellent example of a grant recipient going out to meet the needs of the DOE and the DOE workers. So what they've done, they created a class, and they got the the people who were interested from the community went through a training class, very detailed, because, this is critical. So in the end, we've got radiological control technicians that is a workforce development opportunity that was taken advantage of to help the community, to help the DOE site, and to raise the awareness level. So it's like everybody is working towards the synergy of making it safe inside the gates and outside the gates at those two DOE facilities. Next slide. Okay, we're going to continue on the safety directives. One of the things about DOE is the establishment and the infrastructure all goes through the Office of Environmental Health, Safety, and Security. So this is kind of like a clearinghouse, no pun intended, but this is where if you go onto that website, on that web page, it'll let you know where you can drill down and find out about the rules, directives, and the guidances, and it's very valuable. Moving on to the next point, worker safety and health program. Again, the DOE employees, the contractors, and the subcontractors, they all deserve to go home. They all deserve to be protected against the exposures that we know are potentially there because it's dangerous and hazardous. So that's one thing we want to make sure we work with our partnerships to address some of the things that we've learned that's been taking place on the DOE facilities. Next slide. This is what we found out. This is the most frequently cited standards. And this is also in the NOFO, but this will give you the insight into where you need to drill down. And a lot of it is 10 CFR 851. You got your general requirements. You got your functional areas, safety and health standards, hazard identification and assessment, hazard prevention and abatement. And I like that one. Prevent. If you prevent it, you're gonna save some wear and tear. The training and information. One thing I do want to take a second. The thing with management responsibilities and worker rights is the clarification. It's not kicking the can down the road. It's like they're going to make it very clear. And that has to be something that's in the training, so the workers, the subcontractor, employees understand who's responsible. Everyone's responsible for their own safety and health. But if you're on the job working, somebody tells you to do something, you're going to keep your job. So we want to make sure it's clear management responsibilities and the workers know their rights. And then, of course, personal protective equipment. That's something that that goes across the board and all hazardous jobs. Make sure that employees are knowledgeable about, the personal protective equipment, where they can get it, where they can don it, how they can check it and store it. All those good. I don't want to get too far gone. My industrial hygienist came out on me. Next slide. Okay, other directives. The DOE has a policy for the Integrated Safety Management, ISM 450.4A. It's got 5 core functions. You'll see them there in the picture. You got to deliver the scope, define the scope of the work, analyze the hazards, develop and implement hazard controls, perform work within the controls, and then provide feedback and improvement. And you notice a circle. So it's continuous improvement. And that's a core function that we need to always think about. How can we get better? The next year when the employees come back to get that refresher training, we want our grant recipients to think about that too. How can we deliver that training better? On to the next point, the safety culture and improvement panel. This is a policy and actually a culture. DOE wants to promote a safety culture to improve the work environment. A culture is something that people are going to do automatically. So some of the things that the worker training program, next slide. So this is a curricular highlight, and this is about safety culture for workers. The foundations for safety leadership. That's a product, of course, that was helped through the CPWR, one of our grant recipients, and that's available. It's not a long course. Then secondly, we have the frontline, well, actually the safety for the orientation for DOE workers. That was developed in corroboration with the Department of Energy themselves. And so the worker training program, again, we're going to try to meet the needs what the Department of Energy need and our grant recipients. We want them to have that initiative to go out there and make the contacts and build that rapport across the nation, all nuclear weapons complex. And then last but not least was that the frontline product there that was developed with the collaboration with our grant recipient, the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters. Next slide. Okay. 30 years is a long time. But guess what? We are focusing on this next 5 years. We're proud in 2023 to have 2,378 courses taught, with 35, like my supervisor Sharon said, 35,000 total workers, with a total contact hours of 421,000 contact hours. That was in 2023. But let me tell you this: we want high quality. We want high quality products. We want high quality trainers. It's not all the numbers game. They look good, but we want to make sure that quality is there. Next slide. Okay. To finish up, I want to tell you about our annual DOE annual report, which this is the 2022 report. The 2023 report will be coming out here this month. And then there's a fact sheet that kind of breaks down the general overview and outline. So the DOE, the nuclear weapons complex, is so big. Sometimes you got to look at that outline. See where am I at? In fact, to jump down at the last bullet there, it's a very key for DOE contractors. It kind of gives you a process of the overview of how it works. It's kind of like you're going out there. Who should you talk to first? Kind of give you that direction that you need to go in. And again, I was lucky. I started the worker training program. I was able to go to the worker training exchange in Indianapolis, Indiana. That only occurs, I think it's every 3 to 4 years. So this is something where we bring all the trainers in to share and network of what we have available. And then of course the clearinghouse, the curricula, like we said, we don't want you to reinvent the wheel. So the curricula is there, but you can look at it and improve it, as I stated before. Next slide. Okay, I'm gonna pass it to my colleague, Eric Prasad. He's gonna take it from here. Thank you.
Hey, good day, everybody. I am going to talk about the overall component, evaluation, attachments, and appendices. Next slide, Mia. Thank you. This is an overview of what I will be discussing. For FAQs, please go to the current WTP Funding Opportunities website link. You will need to state the problem, how the consortium will address target problem related to hazardous waste training, and for your project narrative and the public health relevance of the training and ability of the center to conduct such training. Next slide. For the research plan, please follow the directions as listed in the NOFO. You must provide an overview of the center, especially institutional capacity to conduct the training, and provide an overview of the entire application and explain how the components work together. This is a place to show how the consortium will be managed to complete the targeted training. In this area, you should include the following as listed in the RFA, as opposed to a generic description of the center component. These specific aims should provide an overall indication of what the center provides and propose. For example, the applicant should state the broad long-term objectives and specific aims for worker health and safety training. It is essential that it capture the character of the proposed training program. It should be described that the proposed hazardous material and waste worker populations targeted for training include the size, types of work, and geographic locations, excuse me. Next slide. Some notes about the RFA. This is a single component application, and that there are specific tables that come to the DOE application. For example, tables of DOE sites, collaborators, and worker populations. And there's a 30-page limit for research strategy. Next slide, Mia. Thank you. Other attachments must be included and labeled carefully with a title. WTP funding opportunity website has illustrations of these attachments and table formats as guides, and letters of support are allowed. Next slide. Limited appendix materials are allowed. You need to refer to the NIH notice that is linked here. This NOFO does not request additional allowable appendix. Simply relocating disallowed materials to other parts of the application will result in a non-compliant application unless they are items specified as optional or required for those sections of the application. Next slide. Applicants must include a diagram of the organizational structure of the training center. This diagram should demonstrate how the interactions between the different aspects of the center achieve the mandate-driven goals of the center and how each consortium member organization is integrated into the program structure. The diagram must be uploaded as a PDF file titled Training Center Organizational Structure. Next slide. What are we up to? Applicants must describe key curricular courses in outline form. The description of each curriculum must not exceed 2 pages in length and must include the following: the course title, short description of course, training provider, languages, delivery method, course hours, intended audience, learning objectives, and course outline. Do not include copies of the actual curriculum. The diagram must be provided as a PDF file titled Description of Curriculum. Next slide. To assist the reviewers in understanding the detailed training plans in the first year of the proposed program, tables should be provided that clearly describe the projected total year 1 training and courses to be delivered under the grant, delineated by the primary applicant organization and by the consortium members or subgrantees. 2 types of tables should be included: the year 1 total project training that provides a summary across the consortia. And in the next slide, the projected courses, to include a table for the primary applicant organization and each subgrantee as applicable, with columns for curricula, number of courses, number of trainees per course, contact hours per course, and total number of contact hours. Next slide, please. Once again, specific to DOE applications, there are tables for DOE sites, collaborators, and worker populations that are required. Next slide, please. This is a clinical trials not accepted application. There is an information sheet, clinical trial information sheet for NIHS applicants proposing activities for the NIHS worker training program that is online and produced by the NIH Director of Human Subjects Research. It provides language on how to frame evaluations in the context of training as a guide, as generalizations cannot be made. Evaluation plans of grant recipients, for example, in 2019, were sent to this group by the NIH, and they had found that those applications were not clinical trials, to provide an example, but yet they cannot provide a generalization for the current application. So if you have questions specific to clinical trials, please email the WTP mailbox that will be provided so we can forward those questions directly to the NIH Director of Human Subjects Research for appropriate responses. Next slide, please. Training programs also are required to meet the NIHS minimum health and safety training criteria, guidance for HAZMAT and HAZMAT supporting training. So our minimum criteria. This guidance emphasizes the principles of adult education, establishes minimum criteria for the training programs, and provides guidelines on evaluation. That is a required component of this program, and we both utilize quantitative and qualitative outcomes. Next slide, please. The proposed evaluation plan should include both the process and the intended outcome evaluation, how it plans to be implemented, and understanding the measurements of student learning, the quality of the training, and the instructor feedback of the program. Next slide, please. Over its 30-year plus history of the NIHS and Department of Energy partnership, and across multiple grantees over many years, there have been a number of key outputs about this program on radiological disposal device preparedness training tools, white papers on integrated health and safety, technical workshops, for example, on safety culture, and reports on DOE safety culture initiatives, and our own program evaluation of NIHS and DOE, which I implore you to explore and understanding those references to help build your application. Next slide, please. And now I turn it over to the wonderful Kathy Allmark to talk about tips, guidelines, and instructions. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Yes. Please make it easy for the reviewers by following all the instructions in the NOFO and closely follow all the guidelines. Your application should be well written, well organized, and complete in all details. Next slide. For general information, you can only submit one application per organization, and there are page limitations, and there are links here that tell you what must be followed. And once again, for this NOFO, the research strategy section is limited to 30 pages. Next slide. So for target populations, you need to identify, describe, and document access to target populations to be trained. And this includes information about the size of the target population, the worker profiles, types of hazardous materials, trades and job categories, general location, and degree of health and safety training already received. Next slide. So for the training program, you need to describe the curriculum to be used, use existing curricula, and do not include copies of this actual curriculum as the attached material. You need to outline the curriculum not to exceed 2 pages in length, and it should be included as an attachment. Next slide. So these are important dates. The letter of intent is to be sent by June 8th, and the application receipt date is July 22nd. Next slide. So you're going to be preparing your applications in Assist, and these links will give you step-by-step instructions, FAQs, online help, and we strongly suggest that you watch this quick video. It's about 11 minutes that will help you to submit an NIH grant application in Assist. Next slide. Once again, there's some different resources that we have here that relate to the worker training program and to NIH. Next slide. So there are important things to remember. Read the NOFO carefully and talk to NIH staff listed in that NOFO. Worker training site, the website is linked here. Use the web version of the NOFO and the assist instructions and go with the NOFO first if they differ. We have questions can be sent to the mailbox that is listed here. And we will be posting FAQs that will include the ones generated from our U45 briefing also. Those will be up very, very soon. Next slide. So you need to make your reviewer's job very easy. Be clear, be concise, be organized. We suggest you do not wait to put in your application to the last minute. Start uploading your application at least 1 week before the due date. In case there are errors and you have to get help from the helpline, which could take some time. And we wish you the best of luck. Can you please indicate the expected time frame of the FAQs being posted? And then Kathy indicated the research strategy for the DOE NOFO was 30 pages. The page limit is usually 12 pages, so I wanted to make sure I understood correctly.
I can answer that question for you. This is for the DOE NOFO. So it is a single component application. So you have 30 pages for your page limits for this. That is different from the U45 NOFO. This is UH4. So you will have 30 pages for this one. And in reference to the time frame, we hope to have that published. We'll have the ones for the U45 hopefully before the end of this week, and we'll try to get the DOE one started up next week. We did have a holiday, and we have to go through and make all the materials and things 508 compliant before we put them up, and we want to make sure that we're giving you the responses that is as appropriate as possible. So hopefully we'll have those up sometime next week. I think we also had another question about bio sketches in general. If you have a trainer or someone that you feel is important, you can definitely do a bio sketch on those individuals. But we only want to make sure that we have those who actually have who are key personnel, and those will only be needed, and as far as their other support and those type of things later on when it's requested, and that's just in time. And James Williams will be going on that. But if you indicate an instructor and you want to make sure that they are, key information, and you want to put them in and have a bio sketch, yes, please do. I do not think that they need to have ERA Commons password, but for those people who are key personnel, they do. If anybody has a question online and you want to come off and show your hand up, please do so. If not, we're going to move on with the next part of the presentation for our grants management.
Okay, thank you, Sharon. As she said, my name is James Williams. I am a senior grants officer here at NIEHS, and I am the lead grants officer overseeing the worker education program for this DOE project. As you've already heard from several of the presenters before me, they've covered much of the material that I had to cover, so I've shortened my slides down greatly. You've heard Eric talk about the tables that are required and what information needs to be put in those tables. You've heard Kathy and Eric talk about clinical trials and human subjects, and the clinical trials are not allowed on this application. So please be very mindful of that and reach out to us if you have any questions regarding human subjects or clinical trials. We'll be glad to work with you before you submit your application and try to make sure that we steer you in the right direction. Next slide, please. As has been said a couple of times before, this is different than the U45 and some of the other mechanisms that we've talked about in the past. This is a single component U45, UH4 mechanism, so single component, and it may have consortia projects. I'm going to go through just a few definitions and talk to you about budget and how to apply and things to look for, and then I'll be glad to answer any questions as we get to the end of this presentation. So as you already know, a grantee or recipient is the entity that's applying for the federal award. You may have consortia as part of your federal project, and that is a non-federal entity that receives a sub-award that is passed through the federal program that you're carrying out through this UH4 award. It's a separate legal entity that will carry out a portion of the scientific or programmatic activities under the direction of you as the recipient of the award. The entity is bound to the grantee through a contract with the grantee. And you may hear us use terms such as sub-awardee or sub-recipient, consortia project, any of those types of terms that we use throughout the grant process. Next slide, please. Consultant, you may have consultants on yours, and that's usually an individual who provides a very specific or professional advice or services for a fee, and they're typically not an employee of the engaging party. To prevent any apparent or conflicts of interest, recipients and consultants must establish written guidelines on indicating the conditions of payment for any consulting fees that you propose in the application that you're going to be submitting. Next slide, please. Signing official is an authorized organizational representative, or the SO, and that role is determined in commons, and that is the person who is authorized to act for and obligate the recipient. They submit information to us. When we talk about communicating back and forth with the grantee, any information that I receive in the grants management office must come from a signing official. It cannot come from the principal investigator. The principal investigator is the individual designated by the organization or the recipient to direct a project or program to be supported under this award. And keep in mind that the principal investigator and the signing official on these awards are not and should not be the same individuals listed. Next slide, please. Roles and responsibilities. The signing official is the one that submits any documentation to NIEHS or NIH or the government in general. That would include the application, just-in-time information, any prior approvals during the life of the grant. They provide written concurrence for any information submitted by the PI and communicates directly with the grants management specialists. The PI directs the project. He or she prepares all the required reports. You work with the signing official on all policy and financial questions or prior approval requests, and you communicate directly with the program officers on scientific and programmatic issues. Next slide, please. Grants management specialist, there's currently 10 of us in my office here at NIEHS, so you could be working with any number of people within the office if your application is selected for funding. And the specialist is the one who is the contact for financial and policy questions. They are responsible for issuing the notice of award or revising that notice of award throughout the life of the grant. And again, we communicate directly with the signing official. Program officer is the contact for scientific and programmatic questions. They approve and prepare any required reports. They communicate directly with the principal investigator, and we work very closely together. So if any prior approvals, such as carryover requests or change of personnel or anything to do with the life of that grant is requested, it gets reviewed and approved by both the program officer and the grants management officer. Next slide, please. Budget preparation. Kathy had a great slide on this. You will be submitting your budget through the ASSIST program, and that's going to be building at SF424. That is a detailed budget. If you've ever submitted any application to NIH, then you'll be familiar with this process, which is why I've condensed these slides down, because a UH4 is really no different budgetary-wise and creating the budget than any other grant that you might have submitted to NIH. There again, it's a single component that may or may not have consortia projects. So it's a very straightforward, simple, detailed budget that you will build in the ASSIST module. There's some links here that you can click, and Kathy's given you some great information as well. Escalation. I've seen a couple of questions come in on this through the fax, and I know I've been asked about this by other projects even this morning. As a recipient, you are eligible and allowed to submit for escalation throughout the life of the grant. However, NIH does not currently award escalation. We've not awarded escalation in the last 8 or 10 years, probably. That may or may not come back in the future, but at this point, for many, many years, NIH has not awarded escalation. So if you put that in your application and you're eligible and allowed to do that based on your organization's policies, just keep in mind that it will not be awarded. It will be taken out of the budget, and you will see a reduction from your request in the out years based on the escalation that may have been included in that. And just if you do put it in there, make sure that it's justified based on your institutional policies and that it's clearly stated. Next slide, please. More on budget preparation with subawards. Follow the same guidelines, same forms, make sure that it's clearly spelled out. The subaward direct costs are included in the parent subtotal direct costs. That could be subject to the budget caps. We've mentioned before that for new recipients that have not yet received a UH4 award in the past, you are capped at $700,000 direct cost per year for the first 5 years of this award. So that is each year, a cap of $700,000 direct cost for new recipients. For budget justification, make sure all your costs are itemized and make sure that you have a justification or a paragraph or explanation for all the costs that you are requesting. Next slide, please. Here's some more continuing with the budget. Other categories include things such as supplies, the consultant fees we've already mentioned, computer services, consortia subaward, facility rental. We don't see much for alterations or renovations. And then other categories as needed. And keep in mind sections G through K should be completed except for the fee. Next slide, please. F&A cost or facilities and administrative costs for this mechanism and for this NOFO that is out, it is capped at 8% modified to direct costs. And the F&A base excludes the amount over the first $25,000 for subawards. So you can get F&A on the first $25,000 of each subaward. And we will exclude equipment from that base as well. 8% cap is applicable to recipients and subrecipients. So keep that in mind as you're building any consortia projects, that F&A rate will also be 8%. And F&A must be provided to all subrecipients in accordance with the 8% cap. Next slide, please. A couple of reminders that you've already heard about, or at least you've heard one several times, that clinical trials are not allowed under this NOFO. There again, please reach out if you have any questions. If you think that you're in a gray area that this may or may not be a clinical trial, please reach out. Let us help you through that process before you submit your application. And keep in mind that foreign component, foreign work is not allowed under this NOFO. Next slide, please. Just-in-time information. If your application gets a fundable score and is selected for funding by NIEHS, at that time, myself or someone within grants management will reach out with very specific information requests for just-in-time. That will include things such as revised other support, and other support must be submitted for anyone that you have identified as key personnel. There again, that's partly why we ask you to limit the people that you list as key personnel. The more people you list, the more documentation you will have to submit. And as well, throughout the life of the grant, the more people you have indicated as key personnel, anytime there's a change to other support or prior approvals needed or change in effort levels, those are just more and more things that have to be managed during the life of the grant. When you submit other support, please keep in mind that 0, NA, not applicable, or blanks will not be accepted. We will send that back to you because we have to have a calendar month or some kind of effort level reported for each person for each project that they're on. That person may or may not be receiving a salary or monetary support, but some level of effort must be listed for each project. And the total commitment cannot exceed 12 calendar months for any individual. When you submit that other support, under the guidance from last year, other support must be digitally signed by each person that is submitting that JIT information for key personnel for their other support. We would ask you things such as human subjects research and IRB approvals. So submit your protocol for IRB review at the time of the application, and the final approval date will be requested through JIT. If you have human subjects and if an IRB is not in place at the time of the award, the project may not be funded or may be delayed in funding because we cannot issue an award that does not have an approved IRB if human subjects are part of the application. Next slide, please. Here's a list of a few resources. There again, they'll help you talk about the budget, the SF424, any questions that you may have. How to apply. There's an application guide there that'll take you through step by step through the application process. There's one link there for assist. I think that's probably the same link that Kathy gave you, which is some great information on building your budget in the assist mechanism module. And some information if you have questions about am I doing human subjects research and what that looks like. And I believe that's it for my slides. Yes. So with that, I will turn it over to Leroy Worth, and at the end, I'll be available for any questions that you may have.
Okay, can I go?
Yes, please go.
Here you go.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate, I'm just getting into this meeting, but I want to just go over aspects in terms of the review side. Leroy Worth, a scientific review officer. I've been a SRO for probably 20, I would say 20th number of years. But what I'll go over today is just in preparation of your applications, these are things you need to be thinking about with deadlines and what the peer review process will be looking for the committee. It will be a special emphasis panel, but this will be what we are looking for in terms of when you submit your application based on the NOFO, and this is UH4, as probably been discussed already. Next slide. Do I have control? Okay, yes, thanks. In terms of letters, this is very important for me, and I want to just go over a few details relative to what we want. The deadline is June 8th, and which is about a week off. Want to make sure that you include your PI address, telephone, and key personnel. When you do provide this information, it's very crucial in terms of me in preparing for the generating that review committee. We always tell people, and as James has alluded to, with that key personnel, it's very crucial that e-commons account, anything associated with your application, that information is up to date. And you will see, and I see it time and time again, and I see it more so after the COVID, that people are moved and their e-commerce account is not updated. And when they do submit, we find out we have conflicts for particular reviewers that we had for a particular application. So when you do generate your application, any key personnel, their e-commerce account, make sure that information is up to date, because if it's not, it causes a lot of issues in terms of preparing that special emphasis panel. So send that to me at worth@nihs.nih.gov. If you could provide a kind of brief focus in terms of training, what you're doing relative to DOE, that will be great. It's kind of generalities, but anything you think will be crucial in terms of expertise or something, make sure you kind of provide what it is you're intending to do. Next slide. Again, James has gone over this. Probably could have coordinated a little bit better, but this is kind of the NIH e-common site, and this where you can go and make register, and then when you do assist, everything is up to date. The receipt date is 5 p.m. July 22nd. You want to make sure if you're submitting that you get your application in early. We get with grants.gov, we can look at that and see the applications are being built. But if there are errors or anything, you want to make sure you can go and correct those errors. So when it's up in the system, that there are no additional errors, because there's nothing we can do on this end to make sure your application is accepted. So we tell you to make sure you get it in the system early and check for issues relative to its submission. If you aren't sure, just contact me and I can check on this end to see if it's being held up in terms of an error or something like that. But make sure, do not wait till the last minute to submit these. We say this time and time again. If you wait till that last minute, it's a good chance that your application might not get accepted and pulled over to grants. Again, everything is submitted through Assist, and I think we have gone over that already. So next slide. I always tell this in terms of people that I work with, applicants or reviewers. There's a place that you do a submission cover letter. In cases where if the NOFO doesn't say they don't take late submissions, you could supply a late submission application. And just like we're telling you about the deadline, if you were participating on a review that occurred 2 months before or after that submit date, and the NOFO says that, you could get additional 2 weeks to submit. We don't promise that in advance, but I've never seen a case if you served on a committee where you could not submit within that 14 days. Uh, there are guide notices. I can put information in the system, but where you just direct it to typing in late submissions, and it will go over policy in terms of that, and make sure that the NOFO says it it uh it coincides with policy on late submission. You do have to provide that in the cover letter. If you have potential conflicts, please put that information in there too. We try to uphold that. In some cases, we might not. If it's not legit, you want to give a reason why in terms of a conflict. That's fine, but make sure you provide that in your cover letter. We do not want you to provide specific reviewers. We will ignore that if you do put that in. We do get people that do that on occasion. Next slide. Again, as I stated earlier, start early, submit early. If you wait, there's going to be problems. I guarantee you, if you aren't accustomed to doing this, there will be things that will cause your application to get flagged, and you have to get that done by 5 o'clock your local time, because otherwise it will not get submitted. And we have to go back and forth. And you don't want to have your application have to deal with what we call DRR, or the referral officer. We call it research referral officer. DRR is Division of Receipt and Referral. That's where applications go and get assigned to ES and the requisite SRO. So put those applications in at least 3 days in advance, and then check for errors. If you don't do that and it gets up timeline, it ain't gonna be anything I can do to make sure your application gets in. I can do my best, but most of the times that's out of our hands. So get it in at least 3 days in advance and check for errors, because those errors sometimes take 24 hours to cycle within the system. Next slide. Yeah, Sharon says 3 to 5 days. Usually, if you got that many errors, then there's something wrong with your application. But yeah, 3 to 5 days, you want to do that. But normally, it's that 2 days before that something doesn't get resolved. If you stay on top of it, you should be able to get that done. But I've never seen where most of the cases are when it's in that last day that they're submitting, and we have to kind of run around and make sure we get the stuff updated. Okay, here's the peer review process. Letters of intent, June 8th. The way we do this is that we receive the applications, we undergo or take an administrative review where we look for responsiveness with the program officers and worker training. If your application is deemed non-responsive, it will be, we call 901, it will be returned. And then there will be no further response from us in terms of your application. If it's deemed responsive, it goes to the review committee, which is in this case again is a SEP, and we will generate a review date somewhere in November. And then when we do that, there will be a second level where we kind of go through the more meritorious applications, depending on how many applications we get in versus the number of awards they potentially can make. We don't talk about funding per se, but we could discuss all the applications in a particular set. But if it was a lot and we have a certain amount of time, then there could be a case where we have less meritorious applications being Indeed. Those that get Indeed do get summary statements, but we only focus the discussion on the more meritorious, and they get summary statements, and it will go to our second level review, which is the January, February council, and funding is going to be this time next year, proposed funding. And that you would speak with your program officers, and just like James alluded to, requesting just in time information. Next slide. This is stuff I kind of gone over already. We want you to understand that views are confidential, and potential conflicts, and sign confidentiality statement with the SEP. You want to pay attention to that NOFO ES 24-002. And again, with these multi-component applications, they receive an overall impact score as individual scores of each component or criterion. And you will get these written critiques from your applications, and they'll be in the system. So make sure you don't kind of reach out to me or reach out to the program officers. You'll get your scores, but we tell you to wait until that summary statement is generated and that's uploaded and into the system. So just wait, you get your score, and then everybody gets kind of antsy. And what does this really mean? We tell you to wait until you get that summary statement. So don't contact the POs and don't contact me. Once you get the summary statement, we try to have them all out within 30 days after the review, but depending on workload, and we're currently down staff, it could take a little bit longer, but we measure this based on working back from the second level review, which is council, and we try to make sure that everything in terms of summary statements are done at least a month before the next council, which will be that February council. Next slide. Next slide. Scoring system is based on 1 to 9. Most of you probably know this, but it ends up being from 10 to 90, 10 being the best scoring and 90 the weakest. Usually there are issues. You very seldom see scores up above 50 or 60, most part, because there are usually moderate weaknesses at that point. And if you have a great idea by talking to the program officers, it's usually going to be something in that range of 20 to 48 to 50. We will discuss most of those applications based on talking with program and making sure we have time to uh, evaluate each application that was submitted. Again, depending on the number of awards, we will figure that out, but it's a chance that all these applications could go to full review. We are told to only deal with the upper half, but again, we have to try to make sure we utilize the time of the reviewers in terms of discussion of the more meritorious applications. Next slide. This is what the scoring scale I just alluded to is that exceptional, outstanding has negligible weaknesses. If you know most study sections, they're going to find some weaknesses with their plan. Again, you just want to know that depending on your score, if it's like a 33, you know it's such some minor weaknesses. If it ends up being like a 48, you're going to fall between numerous minor weakness to one moderate weakness. Again, moderate weaknesses usually are in that 5 to 7 range. Again, after that, we don't usually see scores that fall in that lower half for the most part. And that's how you will evaluate that particular overall impact score. Next slide. Again, just kind of going through the review criteria, these based on this, NIH is going to move away from this eventually for all mechanisms, but we're still in the early stages of that. But this is going to be condensed to 3. But currently, it's significance, investigative, innovation, approach, and environment. When you're preparing your application, make sure you pay attention to this, and I'll go through this over the next few slides. It's very important that you do cover every aspect that in your application. You don't want to go itemized down, but make sure it's cohesive and it makes sense in terms of preparing your application and what you're proposing to do. They each will get a criterion score, and then you'll get an overall impact score. If you, again, if it's, say it was deemed not discussed, you wouldn't get an overall impact score. You will get the criterion scores based on the assigned reviewers. Note, when we do this, we don't usually take into consideration, we do take into consideration human subjects or animal care. There shouldn't be any animal studies per se, but there will be budget questions. If there's any specific recommendations, that gets taken into account. We have resource sharing plan, RSP, and authentication of key biologics, and that's sometimes crucial. But again, those are other considerations. Next slide. Significance, I'll just go through these very quickly. These are things you want to think about when you're submitting your application. Does the project address an important problem or critical barrier, gaps in the field? That's what you want to be addressing and submitting your application. make sure you pay due diligence in looking at these and providing ample discussion on what it is you want trying to do. Always, if you get these slides, you can click on the hyperlink and it's highlighted to specific areas in the text. Please pay attention to that and do not skip on any of these criteria because it could be something. Most times it's with the approach, but significance or the novelty, innovation could be the difference in you getting a 20 somewhere in the what we call excellent outstanding range versus something in the very good range. So make sure you pay specific attention to each one of these criteria. Next one could be the investigators. Next slide. Here, do you have enough experience with that leadership team, and how is the organizational structure? Those are crucial to this. Again, it's always a big administrative organization. It's always crucial for these types of mechanism. Make sure you provide details and success plan, anything in terms of how this is going to be executed. Make sure you spend time in those sections to write that information up. You just don't want to, again, try to just answer these bullet by bullet. Make sure it's cohesive, it's integrated. We always tell people if you've got components associated with it and different parts, make sure it's cohesive and it's what we call interdisciplinary. But again, check the RFA and that's the link there and it takes you to that select section. Next slide. Innovation is, again, this is self-explanatory and you want to look for improvement on methods. What you want to basically, this is the section you want to spend time in telling where the particular field and training or something is located and what it is about what you're proposing that will move the field in terms of providing a better method or concept in doing this. Again, intervention, anything that you can do, basically do due diligence in terms of where the field is or where the training is now, and this is what we are providing. Again, novelty can be very crucial in terms of separating your application out. Next slide. Approach, this is kind of the linchpin of how these get most of the time for reviews for NIH. Everything comes down to the approach. So that's, again, another one of these items is self-explanatory. So make sure you pay attention to this section. One point I would do is that fourth bullet down, potential problems, alternative strategies, benchmarks, that make sure you pay attention to in terms of preparing your application. That's one of the things we try to focus reviewers in terms of when they propose something. What if it's not working as planned? You want to make sure you've thought that through in terms of what additional intervention or different strategies you would go about to improve upon what you thought should be happening, but doesn't appear to be panning out in its current form. So make sure you spend time with that. These sections are, if there are 12 pages, you kind of have the specific aims page, but make sure you with that 11 font, make sure you spend time and address each one of those. And again, make sure it's very focused, easy to read, and it's cohesive. Next slide. Environment, very seldom is environment ever an issue, but again, it's just another one of the criteria. These are the things you want to look for in terms of that. You want to make sure you have appropriate facilities, training, and what you want to do. Hands-on instructions. This stuff is where you detailed here. It's pretty straightforward and very seldom do we see their issues, but make sure you spend time with the environment too, in terms of detailing what it is that we are asking for within the NOFO. Next slide. Just additional points. If you do have human subjects protection, make sure you pay attention of what you're describing and that you've taken proper protocol with that, and you could make sure that stuff's in place. And RB, all that stuff should be in place. biohazards, research sharing plan, authentication key biologics. We don't very seldom have issues with select agents, but if it does, make sure you provide information saying that you addressed this, because we want to make sure it's clean as possible and it gets reviewers excited about your application. And for those renewals, you might have milestones and stuff that you were accomplishing in the first cycle. You want to make sure you provide information of what's going to be done, what you accomplished, what didn't happen, and you provide that information in your application. Next slide. This is just real quickly about applications. You want to be clear, provide additional details, and I've talked about this. Do not have typos. Make sure you have someone else, if they can read it, let them read it and see how someone that's not in the area, see how they view that. Small font size could get kicked out. Poor grammar, those will definitely kill an application. You want to make sure you think everything through in terms of when you're preparing these. You have a short timeline, so make sure you're starting early and you're having other folks look at your application before you submit it. Next slide. Again, I don't want to harp on this, but make sure you pay attention to that NOFO. Tell the reviewers what they need to know, clearly articulate that, and do not, and this happens a lot, even some really great PIs, they have this trust me attitude, and that's typically worst case scenario for the application doing well. You want to cross the I's and dot the T's and get people excited about what it is you're doing. You get to that novelty, and then you got to back that up with the premise of how you're going to execute that. Okay, next slide. I think this is about it. Again, I don't know if Sharon or Kathy, there is a second level review. When you do go to council, it has to go to this second level National Advisory Environmental Health Science Council. And that's where they provide what they call ZOC, a zone of consideration of their funding plan for the PIs. And you want to make sure if you talk to the PO, once you get your summary statements, they might request that you provide an information letter. Make sure you do that, and make sure you do it a month before the council. They can talk to them about when is the council, and that they get that information in time that POs can have a view of it and the council member. Note that for NOFOs, they are not appealable. So depending on the outcome, you cannot appeal these. You just can provide an information letter. So make sure when if you do want to respond to the summary statement, that you talk and communicate, and they will provide additional information to POs to you in terms of anything that might be addressable in that summary statement. You provide them in terms of additional information in that letter. Next slide. This is just the contacts, Leroy Worth and Linda Bass. We'll be executing these reviews, and program specialists also involved. Our first line for you will be through Linda or I in terms of preparing your application or something. If you have any questions or inquiries, you can check with POs, but you can also check with us, but make sure you don't wait till the last minute. Because we get a lot of emails from different reviews, and it could take us 3 or 4 days to get back to you. So make sure if you got a question, you have a question, contact us as soon as you have that. Don't wait on that, because depending on timing, we might be able to get back to you, and then we might not. But if you have any questions in terms of your submission, please reach out, and these are the numbers to call us. Okay. We can take questions. That should be it.
Thank you, Leroy, and thank you, James. Now we're going to open it up for specific grants management and review questions. And then after that, we'll go back to any general questions. Leroy, there is a question for you.
Yep.
Will the sender receive acknowledgement of sending a letter of intent?
Sometimes they are not binding. If you don't get a letter from me, that means I did get it. So if I try to respond to it, again, I'm very heavily loaded right now. What I tell people, if I didn't respond, follow up with email saying, I want to be sure that you receive my letter of intent. And I usually will catch it the second time around. But make sure you, again, you're the holder of that particular application. And there are things that will fall through the cracks because our system, for some reason now, it does not queue things based on when they're submitted. They queue them based on a batch. And so for some reason, I get emails in batches and won't get any emails for 2 hours. And then I'll get 20 some emails happen in like 5 minutes. So make sure if you don't hear from me, because I usually am pretty good about responding. If you don't, send a follow-up email confirming that I received your letter of intent, please.
All right. Are there any other questions in the email that I missed? Anyone want to raise their hand and ask their question live on the Zoom session? Please do so.
There will be questions for sure. I can tell you in preparation applications. I've been in this business a long time. A lot of times everything is fine until you actually get in and start working on it. There will be questions that arise. I can pretty much guarantee it. There was a Q&A. I think it popped up. I don't know if it was for me or James.
Leroy, I think this is yours.
Okay.
How does NIEHS protect applicants from any potential organizational bias from grant reviewers?
Now that is a tough question. We get this all the time. And the way I do it, and it's me personally, when we get critiques in from reviewers based on assignments, we usually can tell sometimes, and sometimes we might not catch it, when it appears that that's one drafted their critiques based on bias. And again, this is why we try to have at least 3 reviewers on the application, and it's clear. Usually, most times, reviewers will indicate that they probably are in conflict. It's hard to predict that. Some applicants think they see a person, they think that person is in conflict. And if it's not anything, well, I see based on NIH extended policy, it's not a conflict, then we will allow that person to view that application, because a lot of times you think it's that person and it ends up not being that person that was maybe biased in terms of your application. Usually if it's a case like that, they usually know that this person could think it's me, and they don't usually introduce that in the review. But if you feel like if somebody could be a potential, then provide that in that cover letter, as I mentioned in the talk, and I will discuss further with you in terms of what that issue can be. Because I've had cases where applicants written to me saying this person is on the committee, I don't want them on the application. We can't discuss information like that in terms of if they were signed or not. But trust me, usually the reviewer is pretty conscientious and will let us know that they are in conflict or they don't feel comfortable reviewing it and want to declare themselves to be in conflict. But again, if you feel like you need to stress that, put it in that cover letter.
Right. Any other questions?
Again, you can reach out to us anytime. If you don't get me the first time, please reach out. If you don't program, include them on it, because they will come back and make sure I've addressed it for sure. So if you do send it, just make sure PO's on it.
So for point of clarification, we are working on any FAQs that come out. And so we hope to have them posted for the U45 this week, and hopefully have them posted for the UH4 NOFO by next week. We hopefully are also going to have the recordings posted, but it takes a little bit more time for those because we have to do a 508 compliance, so we have to have a transcript and all of that, so it takes a little bit longer for us to have that information up, but we hope to have that up soon for everybody. Any other questions?
The mailbox is clear.
Okay.
There was someone popped up alerting about the FAQs are posted.
Yeah, will you alert us when the FAQs are posted? We could send it out to the listservs, but if you're not on our listserv, you wouldn't receive it.
Also posted in our Clearinghouse news brief, and it'll be on our webpage when it comes up. So we just tell you to keep checking that webpage and do it, so you'll have that information available. All right, one of the last thing I wanted to mention to everybody is that this is a single component application. So your research strategy is 30 pages. It is not 12. So wanted to be clear about that because that was one question that came in. So for this one, it is 30 pages. But we will post all this information and have it available. Any other questions that you have, please make sure that you send them to us via email, and we will make sure we send that to you. And if you have any other questions, please make sure you send them to the WETP@niehs.nih.gov. And that way that it will come to all of us and we'll be able to see the questions and make sure that we add them to the FAQs. And we'll also try to start responding directly to those emails or at least send you the link to where it's located. All right, last call. I
Now,
wanted to thank.
Sharon, you said with the 30 pages, that's the research strategy, right? Or proposed, so they get the one, still have the one page for the specific aims or relative to that.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay,
But we left it open for 30 pages for the DOE.
okay, thanks.
All right. I
That's
wanted
good
to
to know.
also just thank everyone here and worker training staff for pulling together the presentations for grants management and also from scientific review. We do these things in partnership because we are one NIEHS and we couldn't do it without our staff doing the different roles and their responsibilities. And we also like to also thank the Clearinghouse staff that provided support for this webinar and provided all the links and made sure that everything was clear. And we will be making sure we put this information up. Please don't hesitate to contact us if you have any questions. But thanks again. If there are no other questions, this concludes the webinar.